Think about the following two questions. 1. What case established the precedent for the freedom of the press in colonial America? 2. What is the impact of the internet on newspapers? In this video, we'll learn the transition of the newspaper and what it means to the relationship between the newspaper and its readers. Over the course of its long and complex history, the newspaper has undergone many transformations. In Caesar's time, Rome had a newspaper. During the Tang Dynasty in China, the Kaiyuan Zabao published the government news. However, the newspapers we recognize today have their roots in the 17th century Europe. They were called Courantals. Newspaper did not come to the American colonies until September 25, 1690, when Boston bookseller and printer Benjamin Harris printed public occurrences, both foreign and domestic. Though intended for continuous publication, it only lasted for one day because it was shut down by the colonial government. In 1733, John Peter Zenger founded the New York Weekly Journal. Zenger's paper soon began criticizing the newly appointed colonial governor, William Cosby. In late 1734, Cosby had Zenger arrested. The charge was seditious libel, which means criticism of the government that incites discontent. The verdict was based not on the truth or falsehood of the printed words, but on whether they had been printed to defame the government. 8 months later, prominent Philadelphia lawyer Andrew Hamilton defended Zenger in an important trial. Hamilton persuaded the jury to consider the truth and whether or not what was printed was a fact. Zenger's trial demonstrated to the papers that they could potentially print honest criticism of the government without fear of retribution. As late as the early 1800s, newspapers were still quite expensive to print. Although daily papers had become more common, most were priced well above what artisans and other working-class citizens could afford. As such, newspaper readership was limited to the elite. All that changed in 1833 when Benjamin Day created The Sun. Printed on small, letter-sized pages, The Sun sold for just a penny. It was the first newspaper printed by what became known as the penny press. With the Industrial Revolution in full swing, Day employed the new steam-driven two-cylinder press to print the paper, greatly improving production efficiency. As he reached out to new readers, Day wanted to alter the way news was presented. The Sun appealed to new readers who had not previously been reached by a newspaper. It redefined news to fit the tastes, interests, and reading skills of these less educated readers. Up to that time, news generally meant reports on social, commercial, or political events of genuine importance. Benjamin Day, however, filled the paper with news the people in the street found exciting: catastrophe, disaster, crime, amusement, etc. Additionally, Day left plenty of room for advertisements. This penny press was successful because it had great appeal for advertisers. Printing technology was making rapid strides, moving toward ever-increasing automation. Day's adoption of new format and industrialized method of printing was a huge success. Papers continued to gain in popularity. More and more newspapers began to seek out the news. The role of reporter grew more complex and specialized as papers added foreign correspondents and specialized reporters. Reporters were sent to the scene, even scenes of battles. The rising demand for fresh news was met by newly formed cooperative news gathering agencies or wire services, which made use of the telegraph wires. The last decade of the 19th century is significant to the growth of the press because it was the beginning of a new kind of journalism, yellow journalism. New York World publisher Joseph Pulitzer developed a new journalistic style that relied on an intensified use of sensationalism. Stories focused on crime, violence, emotion, and sex. This sensationalistic style served as the forerunner for today's tabloids. Although investigative journalism was predominant, editors paid more attention to how the story was told and relied on shocking headlines to sell their papers. As the competition among newspapers grew fiercer, brutal struggles for additional readers developed between the leaders of giant rival papers. They would fight by any means available to expand their circulation figures, which were, of course, the key to increased advertising revenues and profits. When Pulitzer was establishing the New York World, William Randolph Hearst, the admirer and main competitor of Pulitzer, took over the New York Journal. Hearst competed directly with Pulitzer for readership, employees, and content. The battle between these two major New York newspapers escalated as Pulitzer and Hearst attempted to outsell one another. The papers slashed their prices back down to a penny, stole editors and reporters from each other, and filled their papers with outrageous, sensationalistic headlines. The impacts of yellow journalism upon society can't be neglected. First, intellectuals in general were deeply wounded by yellow journalism. According to them, the great new means of communication was turning societal degeneration. Second, leaders in religion, education, law, and government increasingly voiced strong protests. Then, the press giants were faced with the threat of losing public confidence in society. As a result, a number of major publishers began to put their own publishing in order. Gradually, the press became less sensational and more responsible. A set of codes and norms defining its limits and responsibilities gradually became increasingly clear. While the mass press today varies in its degree of such strict codes, the excessive yellow journalism is a thing of the past. Today, the newspaper serves general interests of specific communities with news, comments, features, photographs, and advertisements. With new ways of getting news, the disconnection between newspapers and readers is deepening. With rising popularity of television journalism and the internet, newspapers as a whole experience dramatic decline in both subscribers and overall readership. Yet, the newspaper's most significant challenge is certainly the internet. As online readership grows, print readership declines. Readers of the new generation grew up with the internet, and they have developed different expectations of the speed, nature, and cost of information. That is to say, online communication has a profound effect on the newspaper industry. As more and more individuals turn to the internet to receive news for free, traditional newspapers struggle to remain competitive and hold on to their traditional readers. So most newspapers have embraced the culture shift and have moved to the online journalism market. For many of them, this means creating an online version of their printed paper that readers will have access to from any location and at any time. In the meantime, news organizations are combining multiple media in the same newsroom or sharing their resources with other media in a trend called convergence. This has led to a new form of multimedia journalism. Multimedia journalists combine interactive text, graphics, video, and sound to make a story with multiple versions, from straight text to podcasts that will go on different media platforms. They also interact with readers and viewers of the news in blogs, chats, or emails. Although print newspapers are making the transformation to digital news with some success, established digital news sites that were never print newspapers are making waves. Sites such as the Huffington Post in the US and The Paper in China are growing in popularity. Despite these challenges, newspapers, both in print and online, continue to seek new ways to provide the public with accurate and timely information. Having long been adapting to social and cultural shifts, and in the face of losing print newspapers altogether, the newspaper industry continues to reinvent itself to keep up with the digital world.